Get ready to rumble!
I love Hercules. I mean, I am horribly biased, this being my first Disney movie on the big screen, and I owe it a lot. It got me into theatre, to superheroes, to real mythology. It got me interested in art and colours and music and breathing. Plenty of stuff that's difficult to separate, I know. But I try to give things I used to love a fair shake-up on a rewatch and find most of them don't,
when Earth was smoking and the lava.
Hercules has mostly held up for me though, and one way is in how I think it does justice to the concept of a modern musical. I wouldn't say it's my favourite or even the best. There is only one true God Emperor King of animated musicals. Sorry, gang. But I will say that it's a great case study in making a fantastic musical with a soundtrack that stands out from the pack. This is just going to be a short dissection of what I think it does well within the musical medium, and I will talk a little bit about musical theatre generally, and this is where I reveal I'm just a massive musical theatre dweeb. I'm so sorry, I know you were expecting something more exciting perhaps, like video games and sick BMX stunts. Yeah, boy, tricky! Okay, so somewhere along the line, I heard it said that the potpourri of ideas that make up Hercules doesn't come together, and while this might sound rather conceited on my part, I believe I can disprove this rather easily in the form of a very brief, extremely amateur history lesson. We must go back to a time before elephants, no, they were around. Hercules is very well suited for the form of a musical in its heritage. The Greeks came up with this little thing, you might have heard of it before, it's kind of important, you know, theatre. They didn't have an awful lot to make stories happen, just their bodies and voices, maybe a couple sticks, some coloured togas, hard light projections from space. The Greeks' limitations would actually allow them to explore techniques we still use today to create the suspension of disbelief in a live space. The characters they told stories of were larger than life, folks who may have perhaps fallen into legend, folks who needed exaggerated presentations to get them across to a large audience sitting at a distance from the action.
This is the story of Antigone.
Speak up, I can't hear you, mate.
A mutual love of storytelling helps a lot. That's the thing, you're already by choosing to watch the show becoming complicit in a lie. You know that the things in front of you aren't real, but you've chosen to accept that. Now it's up to the actors to find ways to best express that lie. A lot of deliberate forms of deception that, because we're already out to be fooled, we're more inclined to accept. Masks were a popular choice, helping create a disassociation between the human in front of us and the parts they were playing. Several actors could wear the same mask to represent the same individual or concept. It was a physical illustration that what we were looking at was a representative of an idea rather than an actual person. An avatar, nay, a character. Yes, very clever, B-Mask. Quite right. That use of several figures at once, acting often as a representation of the public to create a sense of wider context, was known as a Greek chorus, a group of actors that would comment on the unfolding situation in a way the singular characters within the piece could not, and better perhaps express the author's intent and direction for the story's messages. They sometimes all spoke at once, so even the sound of what they were saying was given an omnipotent edge.
Look, here's a man who killed his father and slept with his mother.
I hate to tell you what they call my son in Harlem.
There's another kind of exaggerated sound they use too, music. The Greeks often paired music and words together more frequently than music alone. It was seen as this abstracted science that brought out the physical emotion of a word better than the word on its own. There was an element where this was all for leisure and experimentation and getting absolutely munted, but it was heightened for another reason, the same reason almost everything was done in Sphinx times. It was seen as a performance to a world beyond. To the gods. As time has gone on and public tastes have changed, theatre has evolved to reflect this and left a lot of these methods by the wayside. Technical enhancements and our ability to bridge our disbelief even further allows for more nuances in natural performances to be seen and enjoyed. There's a great interest in seeing a replication of real-world reactions and subtleties in our ongoing observation of human beings. We see that in movies too, which brings every individual of the audience into the action in a more intimate fashion. That's supposed to be your sightline on the screen at all times, exactly what a director wants you to see. These ideas of classic Greek theatrical techniques aren't so important to that kind of performance, and could no longer protect those fanciful visions. Putting a legendary figure on film without the right budget, I mean you could do it, it just won't be that believable. It will be hilarious though.
I'm tired of the same old faces, the same old things.
You are trying my patience, Hercules.
You are trying mine.
I still recommend this, especially the part where he beats a man dressed as a bear to death to the funny music. But musical theatre, that's where this history still matters. The medium is inherently about song, which we know people don't just burst into unless they produced a really good headphone scheme, but music-based storytelling stayed with people beyond ancient history. The Broadway we know of today developed from a culture of people that featured music as part of their daily life, sometimes cribbing from the godly celebration they grew up with, Jewish culture especially. Most of Broadway's staple diets come from Jewish creators. So many of them drew their inspirations from the sound of their culture, and like the Greeks, it was a celebration of life, but maybe now in smaller, different ways. More mundane ways, more humorous ways.
There is a huge connection between Broadway and the American Yiddish theater.
There's a big affinity between the Jewish wail that you hear in the temple and the black spiritual or the blues.
It's all minor because, Jews and their misery. The blacks, amazingly, always still had a little faith and hope. So they're at odds, not the Jews.
Greek theatre had remained a cultural milestone, and one Broadway gimmick employed by these artists was often to have a show lampooning that style against the newer approach. The Golden Apple, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, The Frogs, or rather the adapted musical of The Frogs, Boys from Syracuse, that's one that plays with it the most, also being based on Shakespeare's Comedy of Errors.
But you can keep your Athens, you can keep your Rome. I'm a hometown fella and I pine for home. I wanna go back to dear old Syracuse.
It's historical theatre as interpreted by ordinary New Yorkers, the work of developed societies commenting on each other, and you would be amazed at the overlap. What these creators would find is that actually a lot of this was still useful to learn from in order to find new ways of expressing ideas to audiences, which one such Jewish boy was about to present to Disney. Howard Ashman, a homegrown dramatist who created the musical version of Little Shop of Horrors with the wonderfully talented Alan Menken, don't worry, we're getting to him, was thrilled to be asked to join Disney in the 1980s to help turn their movies into musicals. Musical movies had, at the time, not always lived up to their potential. Maybe the visuals were dazzling and the actors were big name, woo ha, look at who they got, people, but perhaps they felt a little stilted in their filming. Sometimes they were shown in this really flat, locked off manner, and while they had a couple of standout moments, they mostly existed to preserve the stage show. Howard was all too aware of this sentiment. He understood that musicals only exist as a heightened medium, something that needed to be matched in all areas of production. Animation, in many ways, was the perfect medium to do it in. He spoke many times of the symbiotic relationship between the American musical and animation, how both had developed to complement each other. Music and animation work on similar abstracted concepts of realizing emotions physically, and on principles of rhythm and timing. It's why the first cartoon with sound had been centered around music. It's why the first feature-length cartoon had been something of a musical. It's why Fantasia was a landmark experiment, and it's why animated musicals needed to come back to the company that had made all of that possible.
It may be that music plays such an important role here, can play an important role here. Music may have more license in the animated film in the same way that it does in the theater, simply because the level of reality is different. So yeah, I do think that animation might be one of the last places where we'll continue to buy the use of music substantially in a narrative format.
Howard would change the way Disney made movies, and while his passing was one of the greatest tragedies that ever happened to the musical art form, he managed to be a guiding force that took them through 3 films that have radically altered the concept and popularity of musicals in people's minds forever.
You never had a friend like me.
And that, at last, brings us to Hercules. Man, that's an ugly poster. The movie is, in many ways, a distillation of Western theatrical culture's evolution to that point. Animation would serve as the Greek masks and costumes of old. Only now we could go a step further and actually visualize the raw power of the characters involved. Gerald Scarfe has a sense of classical, dramatic energy to his work, and therefore was a perfect choice to serve as the overlying influence for the design of the characters in the films, merged with the readability and finesse of the Disney technique. The musical choice is a modern interpretation of the godly celebrations of that ancient culture. The New York fast-talking style shares roots with the uptown modernity experienced by the Greeks, and translates those concepts to contemporary ears, becoming a stylistic gag. The editing and animation achieve a visual flair that matches the rhythm and pace of the music in a way no live-action performance can ever really accomplish. And last is the idea of the modern myth, the sports star and the superhero, being the most obvious equivalent to the heroes of yore. I don't know, man. It all fits together to me. Thanks for telling thousands of people otherwise for nearly a decade. No, I'm not bitter about this at all. That's not why I made this video. Why are you asking? Okay, I've skimped on a lot of the details, and as I said, this is an incredibly abridged, incredibly amateur history, and I'm no big brain.
Yes.
But you see the basic through line here. It's why what Hercules became feels so natural. Almost every hair on its head is rooted in the development of the modern musical, now boiled down to the simplest possible tribute that can be readily understood by a mass audience. I'm glad we went through such a rich history of culture so we could eventually fight the heartless and save video games.
Get up when the Hydra's back!
One of the great rules of musical songs is very simple. They must tell a story. This principle was put forward by my actual all-time hero, Stephen Sondheim, who had it passed to him by his all-time hero, Oscar Hammerstein. The songs they wrote had incredibly different styles and content, but they both followed this principle to great success. Here, I'll let Steve fill you in.
A song should be like a play. It should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It should have an idea, state the idea, and then build the idea and develop it and finish. And at the end, you should be at a place different from where you began.
Hercules takes this rule very seriously. It uses a bunch of different approaches and says a lot of different things, but the rule is always followed. I think what's also clever is that the film uses the visuals to advance what the songs can say, in a way only animation can. We spoke earlier about Ashman's belief that music and animation belong together, and Hercules is the best case I've seen for it yet. It really focuses on the marriage between pictures and music. We see things from imposing vistas with unclear horizons that use music to actualize the sheer sense of space, to fast cuts through quick vignettes with short sounds. The actual editing is something of an achievement too. No other Disney film is cut together with quite this much energy. How are more animated films not like this? Why is Franken-Creepy the only other one? The music itself comes from a grade A team of vets. Howard's frequent collaborator, the extraordinarily talented composer Alan Menken, had already written the music for what are now considered the most recognisable musical theatre songs on the planet Earth. Not a bad way to buy dinner. He complimented Howard well because he appealed to his sense of dramatic justification. His adaptability meant that the style of the music would often reflect the style of the story, and they were both always looking to contemporise their work to offer a new diversity of style.
And only then came...
I think the guy has like a bunch of Oscars now? Lucky boy. David Zippel was the lyricist, and he too had something of an interesting career in the field, having originally obtained a degree as a lawyer in case everything else fell through. His lyrics reflect that kind of lawyerly vibe. Urbane, witty, fast-talking. He'd helped create shows that had this bubblegum pop attitude, including the adaptation of classic movie The Goodbye Girl and the genre-heavy City of Angels.
You are some gumshoe, you just don't think. Well, get this dumb gumshoe, you come from my inkwell.
You are so thick, you eat, breathe, sleep fiction. I'm your meal ticket, knee deep in cheap fiction.
Together they were the right fit for this urbanized bit of Greek history, and each song in the piece neatly fits into the frame of the picture. I would like to add that, you know, for all the game I talk, I'm pretty uneducated when it comes to the actual definitions of music theory, and that's going to be really obvious if it wasn't already, so I can only speak for the drama I think the music creates. It's up to you whether or not I'm on the right path as I go through these, so, you know, sorry everyone, let me just get back under my rock, and oh dear.
You go, girl.
Gospel truth sets the scene of the story and establishes the tone, with the most obvious pun of the bunch. Our Greek chorus is now a gospel choir. What a perfect correlation. It's in the name. Gospel. In all of its definitions even. It was a very erudite choice on the part of the creators and a really smart way to make the music feel relevant to the form. The muse is able to use both the sound of the modern definition and the storytelling techniques of the original. It's not the first time Alan Menken has used this to great effect either.
Downtown, where the folks are broke, you go downtown, where your life's a joke, you go downtown, where you buy a toke, and you go home to Skid Row.
Little Shop now feels like a prototype of this idea in action, and wouldn't you know it, one of the reasons the directors came back to the style was because of that show's creator.
We had to kind of talk Alan into that. He was thinking it might be more classical, and I was influenced actually because Howard Ashman, years before when we went to New York, he said, you should go see this play, The Gospel at Colognes, which is a traditional Sophocles drama, but it was done as a gospel sort of musical. And Howard said it's the best thing on Broadway right now.
The intro is designed to sort of tease the scale. We know these amazing girls can hit some ridiculous high notes, but it's restrained as we ease the audience into the sound of the score.
Back when the the world was new.
They're often pulled back down to the lower part of the scale as they recount the way Earth was at its lowest point.
Chaos reigned and earthquakes and volcanoes never slept.
Zeus comes in and they start to slide up again.
He hurled his thunder.
With the Titans gone, they're free to go nuts, and they do. Chaos averted, they settle on the higher notes.
Though honey it may seem impossible, that's the gospel truth. That's the gospel truth.
We are literally lifted by the high notes of the song as it rises into the realm of the mighty and powerful Gorge. They also bleed it into the movie's underscoring. Good job.
He ran the underworld.
This song picks up later with Hades, now underscored with this wailing bluesy choir, almost like at a wake to give this funereal feeling of death surrounding the listener.
And that's the gospel truth. Young Herc was mortal now.
The last reprise comes in, now less depressive, but still bluesy to emphasise that things ain't great. The key is subtly more optimistic, however, to show that there's hope that things will get better soon.
And that's the gospel truth.
I Will Go the Distance is what is known as an I Want song. This establishes the lead character's outer motivation for what they want in the story, very self-explanatory.
I have often dreamed of a far-off place where a great warm welcome will be waiting for me.
Musically, the way it's portrayed here is a combination of ideas that give it this sense of weighted destiny.
We needed something that was heroic, like Superman. Also, it needed a poignant nature about it.
We start somewhere small, somewhere hidden inside the character.
I will find my way. I can go the distance.
Lyrically, this grounds Hercules in the terminology of sportsmanship, going the distance being a sports-based idiom. As he realises how much he wants his desire, and actually takes the call to action, it rises into something grander than he expected. We go up a tone.
I don't care how far, somehow I'll be strong.
The score opens up with Herc's revelation that maybe there was something different about him after all, and he's ready to accept the challenge in full. Yeah, alright Roger, you show enough now, move on.
So when do we start? Can we start now?
I'd given up hope that someone would come along.
One Last Hope is a much more traditional musical song, if mostly because Phil is a traditional kind of guy. He's from an old world where this kind of sound is the standard. It reflects how his stance on sports and life is, right now, way less intense than Herc's.
I've been out to pasture pound, my ambition gone.
There's also this little pulse behind it, coupled with a brassier instrumentation that gives it the irrepressibility and texture of a sports session. Sounds more like something from Damn Yankees, which, by the way, is about baseball and the devil, because it's a Faustian... It's okay, I wouldn't worry about it. Now, Danny's not really a singer. So his character acting is what colours the interest rather than his vocal power, although some of it's not that bad. Through the song, we see it rise and fall against Herc's successes and failures without losing the core melody, and see him achieve development of a sort.
Now that's more like it!
Consequently, the song undergoes a transformation in its sound to take us into the final touchdown.
When kid, it's up to you.
He was so hot, steam looked cool.
Zero to Hero is the rapid escalation of the public's awareness of Hercules, presented as a montage told by the muses to represent the sound of the community's reaction, and it's so good. It could only exist as an energetic montage, covering such a huge amount of ideas in a small time frame to accentuate the excitement that Hercules' daring deeds create. The editing is again stunning, harsh cuts across the board, and the variety of image styles reflects the reach Hercules now has with the public, as well as the feverish enthusiasm they have for him. Gets so frantic to the point where the song actually just breaks in half as it runs away with itself. I also like this kind of doublespeak going on. It's both cutting loose to accentuate his success and make us laugh, but there's totally an awareness that maybe it's kinda, too much. Like, we shouldn't be allowed this, it's not sustainable. It can only go downhill from here. I Won't Say I'm in Love is our second ballad, and originally was going to just be a classic love song. The problem was, as raised by her animator at the time, that didn't reflect Meg as a character, someone who at this point in the story was still very guarded with her emotions and her interest in lasting relationships. Menken and Zippel agreed, and revised the song to something which, narratively, ended up having way more conflict.
That's ancient history, been there, done that.
Meg puts her drawn-out, almost pained anguish against the self-confident beats and chatter of the chorus, who use the confidence of their voices to represent the solidity of their ideas. This reflects the reality of their voices too. Susan Egan related that, while she was a trained singer, it took her far longer to nail the song's style compared to the muses, who improv this stuff for a living and all knew exactly what they were doing. She opens her voice wider, she's desperate to drown them out, but they're gonna keep going, it's a musical battle, I tell you. In Amadeus, yeah I know, Peter Schaffer writes, through the character of Mozart, about the magic in how music allows us to hear the distinct voices of several different points of view at once, and this song is a strong example of just that, both sides reflected inside of the same whole. God damn it, I am such a soft touch, I know, I'm sorry, I can't help it, but you know, just a little dramatic irony, a little reluctance, a little natural expression, and you get something much more interesting than the characters saying exactly what they feel.
At least out loud, I won't say I'm in love.
A Star Is Born is the last big number, and, to contrast with Gospel Truth being close to the ground, puts the notes up there with the stars. Hercules has made it to the end, the journey is done, so there's no conflict holding back the sound anymore. It can reach right up into the sky. Credits roll, the kids ask for a Mackie D's, we all go home with a Hydra toy, what a good day. So, not all that scientific, there are probably a few people who actually write music who are putting their heads into a pillow right now, but I feel really strongly that they're doing something right here, and you would be amazed at how many musicals, especially animated ones, don't have this going on. For example, let's look at the, fuck it, here's the Tom and Jerry movie.
Yes, animals are business, a money-making business.
So he's singing about the dogs, and he's saying they're only about making money, and the song is kind of... It doesn't really have a style, that's it, there's no subtext here, I'm sorry.
We two, we're friends to the end. Ain't we, my friend?
We're friends to the end, eh? Anything else you want to say about that? No, you just want to keep it at one level for 2 minutes? Okay. This fucking song is stuck in my head.
I know.
Is this a joke? The music is melting, did I have a stroke? Am I clear? Am I making sense? This was about fulfilling character and story. Every part of the buffalo is being used in some way. Finding new ways to tell dynamic, interesting, funny stories through song that actually take you across the map. Hercules is far from perfect, but in fewer songs than your average musical, maybe even your average Disney musical, it creates a soundscape of memorable hits that most shows would kill to just have one of in their repertoire. That's the kind of ingenuity I love. I'm glad it's forever represented by this movie, and, sadly, it's a style I will continue to miss. Okay, this is where I get controversial. I mean, it was going to happen eventually. I wasn't sure how to properly end this, and there are going to be a lot of statements here I'll probably leave dangling because I don't think there's any saving me now. I'm so sorry. The Disney musical has changed a lot. In the 1980s, this was serious business. The company was in the crapper, and they were making bad movies. The public didn't care. A magical concoction of crazy, selfish, talented bastards came in and forced Disney to step up its game and pay attention to how to make good stuff. Roy Disney needed the company's film business back in shape, so he brought in Michael Eisner. Eisner needed the animation department to get its head out of its bum, so he brought in Jeffrey Katzenberg. Katzenberg needed a great team of artists to shake up the dynamic of storytelling at Disney, so he brought in Howard Ashman, and the rest is history. But ever since that era, and the sheer popularity it brought them, Disney's focus has shifted. I always felt their later movies became too complacent. Tangled is a good movie, but it feels like a rough draft. The music has no specific concept, the story and visuals aren't as firmly rooted in a specific style or genre, the style of the credits is more appealing even. Didn't matter. More popular than Princess and the Frog, essentially destroyed the hand-drawn movie business. Frozen doesn't even bother to have any kind of stylistic footing in any department. Didn't matter. Worldwide phenomenon, so much so it's kind of a joke now. Moana was getting there, but God help me, I'm not a Lin-Manuel Miranda fan. I get his auteurship, I just don't see eye to eye with his sense of storytelling through music. I don't think he has the dramatic complexity of a Howard Ashman, and I feel like Disney are trying to make him fill that role. That's the thing, it's not so much just Disney. Whatever's hot on Broadway also tends to fall into a bunch of stylistic traps, and the standards for good Broadway shows have not been the same as the standards for every other medium for quite some time now.
It might sound just a teeny, like something by Puccini, but no, it's all brand new. In fact, so new that who would sue? It's just a case of deja vu.
It's partly why I'm not keen on the reinterpretation of the Disney movies on stage either. There is a long story I could tell about how musicals were bloated into mega-dollar tourist machines relying on huge spectacles and self-indulgence, but it is a long and boring story and I'd only end up being murdered by their fans, so, you know, it's okay, I can accept this, I can live with it now. The medium I love is dead anyway. Why do people love Tim Minchin's horseshit? I also remember when I thought the Disney Renaissance was gone. I had loved Mulan, but it was the last gasp for that kind of style. I thought it probably wouldn't or just couldn't be done like that again. Many years later, in 2010, I went to see Princess and the Frog. It had its issues, and it wasn't pulling in the numbers. The cinema I saw it in was practically empty, but I will never forget the thrill of seeing Almost There on the big screen for the first time. The tone, the colours, the style, it all just came alive for me in a single moment. I imagine that's what it's like to have a religious experience or something. That time around me stood still. It was that powerful. Everything I loved about the medium, everything I hoped to see after Hercules, right there in one song. I was pleased to know that while it didn't have Menken or Zippel, it did have Hercules directors Ron and John on the project, and while I'm no Moana fan, I still appreciate the inspirations that drive them. With that film, they waved goodbye from this kind of storytelling, this small miracle, one last time, and for that, I am grateful. The thing about Hercules was that it wasn't just we're making another Disney musical, oh boy. It was, okay, what kind of musical are we doing? What kind of story are we telling? What makes this completely different from anything we've done before and to anything we'll do again? It really cemented those guiding rules for me, and I hope it can maybe do the same for other creators in the future. I'm probably out of luck on this one, just another grumpy old boy with far too specific interest in this stuff, I don't know. But I do know that it's the one film in the Renaissance I never stop wanting to go back to, and never stop learning from. It will kill me though. Thanks for watching! I know, this is a huge curveball, I'm so sorry, and I have to thank all of my current patrons for making this kind of material possible. If you like my stuff, and if you like this, then do consider donating to my Patreon or just checking out my other work. I want to do more stuff on musicals in the future if this video doesn't crash and burn, and it might, so, you know, come help a drowning boy, I can't swim.
Painful to relate that she thought he was nuts and did not want to meet him nohow. Stop bothering me, creep!